Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, it was coming up all aces for the Red Raiders in their non-conference finale this weekend. What did we like best in the 66-21 drubbing of North Texas?
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. And appreciate you joining us for this reaction episode as we are coming to you on the heels of a 66-21 win for the good guys over North Texas from Jones Stadium. Apparently, breakfast football agrees with these Red Raiders. Chris, we talked about the change from a kickoff time standpoint, somewhat jokingly going into the weekend, but I don't know, maybe there was something to it after the 9 p.m.er did not work out too well for you. 11 a.m. was very kind to you. Tech got off to a fairly quick start. I certainly wouldn't categorize it as a slow start, Chris, in the first quarter, but man, had no idea what we were going to be in for when we got to the second quarter, as there was a 35-point explosion. 21 points in less than a minute, 52 seconds to be exact. And, man, there was a whole lot to love about what was happening at Jones Stadium yesterday.
Yeah, you opened up not just the one can, but two cans on North Texas. You worry about the 11 a.m. kick at home. You just do. There's way too much in the past with most teams where it's just sometimes it takes a bit to get going. You got to manufacture your own energy and all those things, and late arriving crowds and just being early. But it took a bit, but then that second can got opened up and it was curtains, man. I never did I envision the scenario to where I'm told coming out of the locker room, yeah, Barron's, we're gonna put him on ice the rest of the day, and at this time it could make complete sense. It's like, well, of course, most points and a half since 2005. I think 2005 you beat Indiana State. You maybe opened up 3 cans on those guys, but 52 points and a half. I don't care who you're playing. It almost takes perfect storm, or it was just because at some point in the second quarter it was a feeding frenzy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just. You had North Texas rattled. You were able to pressure the QB, and you're able to play complementary football. So whenever one side does something, the other side says, "We got you," and it just kind of compounded North Texas's problems. But that was just not. I just wasn't envisioning that. I mean, you were a 9.5 to 10 to 10.5 point favorite, and there was a lot of people, and I got it, that felt like, okay, North Texas might get you, or this may be really close or closer than everybody's comfortable with, and that just was not the case. You were a lot better than they were, and it appeared to be very motivated and frustrated from the week before.
Yeah, and that's why I say, I mean, again, all the things you described from an 11 a.m. standpoint, kind of a slow start as far as the crowd or something like that, you could understand. But I really didn't feel like Tech got off to a slow start themselves on the field. I mean, it was 17-7 at the end of the first quarter. I thought they actually came out fairly well, but there's just nothing to compare to 35-0 in one specific quarter, which is what we saw there in the second. And yeah, it's always a good sign whenever you see the bucket hat number on the sideline explode like we saw yesterday. I'm just looking down at this guy's in a bucket hat. Josh Kelly's in a bucket hat. Here's another bucket hat. And that means good things as far as the starters are concerned when you're seeing that show up there in the second half. But, a whole lot to like about this. And, of course, we'll spend some time this week going over everything because, believe it or not, even with 66 on the board, it was not a perfect effort from Texas Tech. But, yeah, going through the week last week and having Red Raider fans ask me, what are we going to get this weekend? I said, I truly do not know. Are they going to cover? I truly do not know. Is it going to be tight? Are they going to lose? Are they going to blow them out? I truly do not know. And the result that we did actually get was probably the one that I never even considered, a comfortable cruising kind of win. Now, obviously not to the tune of 66 points on the board, but even if you would have told me, hey, it's 42-17, it's 35-10 or something, just something comfortable, I probably would have been a little skeptical of that, I got to admit, but obviously was very, very wrong in that regard. But with so many things to like, Chris, I'm curious, and you mentioned it, it was a feeding frenzy. Like you go back to some of the Leach era stuff, and it kind of did remind me of that because I remember so many Leach ball games where at one point in the game, this is the number on the board, and then you like take a bathroom break, you come by, how the hell did we get to 45? Like all these points just show up. A lot of times that was rooted almost exclusively in offense, but man, you had some things bouncing your way defensively. Braylon Lux with a pick six. Great to see him back in the mix and making those kinds of plays. So it involved all parts as far as that explosion there in the second quarter. But considering all things, what was the thing that you really liked to see the most yesterday's ball game? What do you think as far as a best of kind of point to point out? What was standing out to you?
Well, there's a lot to pick or a lot to choose from. I maybe I'll just give you some small bullet points here to kind of sum up my answer. This was maybe what, not necessarily a coaching staff or a team, but this is maybe what you had envisioned in week one, to where comfortable, get a lot of youth in the game, get them meaningful snaps, break the seal on their college career. Get them some game experience, and it, as we know, it did not happen. So you could check that box because you got that over the weekend against North Texas. I probably at the top of my list, and it may be buried a bit, but it was Behren Morton. I mean, if not for a couple of Caleb Douglas drops, he starts out his first 17 of 17, and he was just this is the kid that we all know is there. And I just refuse to believe that last weekend is who he is. He's just not. And I think week one and week three, it's pretty fun. And pressure on the QB, that's right up there. And I'll wrap up my answer with this. All of a sudden, you are, while week one was a bit tricky, start to look at it, and it's only fair if we're going to really point out the road record and that it's not been what anybody wants. Your home record is starting to be pretty darn good here under Joey McGuire. He's only lost 3 home games. And so I think that you're really starting to establish, a home field advantage, because 11 a.m. kick or not, your crowd was juiced at times over the weekend, and it certainly was in week one. And these are non-conference opponents, so that should not get lost here. But pressure on the QB, Behren, home record, and I'll could keep going, but I'll leave it there. Yeah,
we will keep going on some subsequent episodes, certainly, because there's a whole lot to choose from. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised with what you got from a crowd standpoint. Again, the early kick and just the disappointment of the previous week, the angst that we knew was out there, justifiably so, for Tech fans. Didn't know necessarily what I would expect to see there in the stands, but I thought it turned out to be a great environment for the Red Raiders. And I'm going to take the easiest way out and just cheat off of your homework, because Behren Morton was going to be my answer. Now, there, again, when you put in 66 on the board, are a lot of things to like, and we could point to some things happening on the ground. We could point to some of those pass catchers as well, but something I want to get into you further this week was the version of Behren Morton that we saw, and whether or not this is kind of a mold that he would really be well-suited to fit as the season moves on. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of times where he's got to complete more than 15 passes, but 15 for 19, 273, 4 touchdowns. You had some big plays, obviously, there in the mix. And I thought there were some throws made in some tight windows as well. It wasn't all just, hey, blown assignment, here's a guy with nobody within 20 yards of him. I thought there were some nice throws made in some tighter windows also. So I'm going to say Behren Morton as far as what I thought was the best of the ball game on Saturday. But you touch on something I wanted to wrap up our conversation on today's reaction episode with, and that was a glimpse at some of the future foundational pieces. First, today's episode brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Fixes tired fast. Whether you've got a long list of tasks at work or a bundle of DIY projects to tackle at home, take a 5 Hour Energy shot so you can cover everything with energy to spare. If you're like me, you've always got a lengthy list of things to get done around the house. So when you get your supplies for any project, don't forget the most essential one, a 5 Hour Energy shot. 5 Hour Energy shots give you the feeling of alertness and energy you need to get in the zone. And that's why 5 Hour Energy Energy is the brand hardworking people like you have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feeling they need to get through a busy and hectic day. And you always know where to find 5-Hour Energy shots right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. Even better, stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy shots. And right now, if you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5-Hour Energy today, you can use our promo code LOCKEDONCFB. That's LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. This offer only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions and does not apply to subscription orders. Boost your day, boost your life, and get in the Get It Done zone by going to 5hourenergy.com today. And that was a glimpse at some of the future foundational pieces. Now, one of those pieces we're seeing in more than just garbage time, obviously, in Cameron Dickey. He's another guy I'm gonna describe as advertised coming out of fall camp. This dude looks like he fits the part, and again, he is a true freshman. I cannot wait to see what the future holds for Cameron Dickey. But man, it was a lot of fun to see Will Hammond finally in action as well. And don't want to make too much out of it, given the stage of which the ball game was whenever we saw him really get in the mix. But I think comfort was kind of the word that was coming to mind when I saw Will Hammond. He looked like a dude that was not blinking in the face of the lights being on Saturday. And I would even say that from the period of time where we saw Cameron Brown getting some snaps at quarterback to then Will Hammond, there was an uptick in what you were doing offensively. And I know that Brown maybe should be viewed more as a kind of a specialist as opposed to, hey, this is our number 2 quarterback, just strict technical term. But man, I really enjoyed seeing Will Hammond, and I know that a lot of other folks shared that opinion as well. If you've seen fall camp, then it's probably not a surprise to you, but for those of us who hadn't, it was our first glimpse of what he was able to do, and he looked really, really comfortable captaining, so to speak, that offense down the field.
Yeah, I think if you were ever in a position to where Barron couldn't play, knock on wood, nobody wants that to be the case. I think you Will Hammond's your starter. I think Cam Brown is more of a specialty, a complementary player with some different things that you can do with him. But Will Hammond is a dude, man. I mean, was an elite 11 quarterback. I think he's got some wheels. He can run. He's athletic. He's just young and maybe not as big as you ultimately want him to grow into, but he's extremely smart. He's very competitive, and he's figured it out. And he's already passed Jake Strong, obviously, on the depth chart because he gets those snaps and reps and everything like that in the game, and Jake does not get in. That's also worth pointing out for people that are very interested in your team and kind of how things are right now. That's how they are. Cam Dickey has got a bright future, and I think you also see Jacoby Williams.
Yeah, buddy.
Also has some of that, and it's going to be their show next year.
Hey, and by the way, Jacoby Williams, I know we hear so much about the lightning in the bottle aspect of what he brings to the field, and he certainly does. But the first time I noticed him on the field, he delivered a slobber knocker of a block. He didn't have the ball in his hands. I was like, whoo! Who's this guy? Then I figured out, it's Jacoby Williams. So another dude that looked like he was not blinking in the face from a physicality standpoint of actually being out there. He's the one that we have to mention.
He's very tough. He's not as big as he'll ultimately be, but he doesn't care, man. He's going to throw his body around, and he's like a salamander trying to tackle him, man. It's like, if you maybe you could tackle him in a phone booth, but I doubt it. But if people out there even know what a phone booth is, because I guess that's an outdated reference. So shame on me, being the old guy here. But I just think you can see that's what's fun about recruiting really well, other than the obvious, is that in games like this, there's a reason to keep paying attention because you get to see the glimpses of some of these guys that you've read about, you've heard about, and it's hard to get guys in the game and get them meaningful snaps and reps, and you don't want to have to do it because of an injury or whatever. This is on your terms, not because it's necessitated to you. But those two backs, awfully fun. Micah Hudson obviously got in there. I know the crowd was having some fun times with that.
Yeah.
You had a couple of offensive linemen that are true freshmen that got in the mix, which Now, this is a negative, okay, from what we saw with a lot of these young guys. It concerns me a bit that some of these true freshmen have maybe passed up some of these redshirt freshmen, whether it's because of injury or whatever. But I mean, Jacob Ponton and Holton Hendricks, they skip over. And again, there may be some injuries here that we're just unaware of, although I'm just going off the injury report. And I will say the one caveat with the injury report is they're only going to tell you who is regularly playing. They're not going to get into any ailments with guys that are at the back end of the travel squad or not on the travel squad, which I don't know if you're worried about all the ailments from your 10th, offensive lineman on down. Those guys are unlikely to get in the game. But like a Nick Fattig and Ellis Davis, Caden Carr. I mean, there were some of these guys that these two true freshmen just kind of Maurice Rodriguez, they skipped over. And so that just kind of, if you're paying attention closely, it's good, but it's not, if that makes sense. But all that being said, it's really fun to watch a lot of these, a lot of the youth. And on defense, you can't really say that as much because so many of the young players are already on there, and like the true freshmen are not, are in some cases are not playing because there's sophomores and redshirt freshmen and all that ahead of them. They're, they need the reps too because they haven't played a ton of football and you're playing a ton on that side. But it was definitely noticeable on some of the offensive skill, but it should give you the warm and fuzzies about the future because it's pretty bright. And Will Hammond, man, yeah, he's got something to him, and you could just tell. And I'm glad people got to see it because there was one time I think he hands it off on the south end, and I think it was when maybe Jacoby Williams got in the end zone, and it looked like it was going to get stood up around the 1 or 2, and Will Hammond realizes this, and he sprints over to the pile, and he's going to be the one. But right before he gets there, it kind of falls in the end zone. But that's just kind of who he is. And I think that tells you a lot. His care factor definitely through the roof.
Yeah, and I think defensively, it kind of seems like we are trending towards seeing more and more. This is not so much of a future kind of pick, maybe a right now kind of pick. But John Curry, man, just seems to be flashing all over whenever he gets his opportunities. And obviously with guys like Roberts and Rodriguez for the time being in front of him, maybe tough to crack through on a full-time basis. I don't know, but he's noticeable when he's out there. There's no question about that.
Yeah, and he's playing through some stuff right now. He's got a shoulder harness and all that. But, yeah, he's got a nose for the ball. He's around it. He makes plays. I mean, he did everything for Lubbock Coronado. He linebackered. He punted. He did all kinds of stuff. Phenomenal baseball player and just a great kid. And he's somebody that you can feel – because his care factor, certainly, this is where he wanted to go. And as soon as that option was made available to him, but his playing time, if his shoulder will cooperate, is going to continue to increase more and more. But you're starting to see maybe a bit more why we felt so good about that linebacking group in total. Can't say that they just had the world's best week 1 or week 2, but I thought they had a lot to do with week 3 here and just your general defensive performance, because that's an offense that was kind of scary coming into Lubbock. Chandler Morris had been throwing it. He was top 3 in the country. What Eric Morris has in the back of his mind from a playbook standpoint. They had really done a lot of things last year and year 1 under him and all that. And I just felt like you really got after him and they never got comfortable. They really, other than the one play where you blitz, it was a field blitz that it's a perfect like hot read, I guess, or however you want to term that, where he identifies it, hits, and there's just nobody back there, and it's 70 yards, and you thought, but that's really the only blip that you had defensively. Other than that, I thought, it was pretty fun. But yeah, I appreciate you mentioning John Curry.
Yeah, that score was the last time I remember thinking, all right, are we going to kind of muck it up and struggle through another one, maybe get a win, but not make it all that much fun? And the reports of our demise, I guess, were exaggerated as far as that was concerned, because then it was 35-0 in the second quarter as the Red Raiders cruised to a 66-21 win and now get set for an ELE week. Everybody love everybody. We're all happy in Raiderland this week, and you got an unbeaten team coming to your house, man. So looking forward to some juice there as we get back to business again from Jones Stadium for the second of 3 consecutive weeks you've got here to get busy in the LBK. We'll be back on the other side to, of course, continue to process what we saw on Saturday. We'll hear from Joey McGuire coming up on Monday, get into those thoughts as the week rolls on. And can't wait to do it all over again. Chris, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoyed it.
Oh, man, you can schedule these anytime after these big dubs, man. Yeah, sign me up for some more of this, please.
Appreciate you guys being out there. For Chris, I'm Casey. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. Thanks to the everydayers out there who are always mixing it up, especially in the YouTube comment section. One of the best ways to help us grow the show, commenting anything below. Thanks for the time, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.